No stuffing, no stress. You can crochet this adorable pumpkin with just yarn and a hook. Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery, and today we're making the easiest, squishiest crochet pumpkin, no stuffing needed. You don't need fiberfill or fancy supplies, just yarn and a hook. This project works up fast, looks adorable, and is perfect for beginners. Whether you're decorating for fall, Thanksgiving, or just want a cozy handmade touch, you're going to love how simple this pumpkin is. To make your no stuffing, easy crochet pumpkin, you're going to need yarn, 100 grams of orange, and about 15 grams of green. So not too much for green, but you need a full ball, 100 grams for your pumpkin. I'll be using an 8mm crochet hook for my no stuff pumpkin. You'll also need about 80 stitch markers. That's a lot, right? If you don't have that many stitch markers, don't worry about it. I'll also be showing you how to use just regular scraps of yarn. You will need a needle, not for sewing in your ends, but for attaching the stem to your pumpkin. And there's also no other tails to sew in. So really, really handy. All we're doing is just attaching the stem, and that's covering up all of our business. And a pair of scissors. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. So we're going to start by tripling your yarn. It is much easier than you think. So we just have our one ball of yarn, and we're going to make 3 strands from the one ball. So it's much easier to do. Here is your tail, the end of your yarn. Just pop your finger onto the other end and bring a loop back just to match. Now, this is small. It's underneath my camera. If you are doing it without the camera restraints, you can just go ahead, grab this, grab your other yarn, and pull your hands apart long enough to get a really nice long strand or a triple strand of yarn. But it doesn't matter. Small is also fine. And where your tail is, that is still our tail. So just because it has that loop beside it, we are still treating it as the end of our yarn, the tail of our yarn. So from the tail end of our yarn, where that tail is, we're going to make a slip knot like you normally would, any which way. Shrink it down, and we're going to pop it onto your hook. Just like that. We're going to grab our stitch markers, and we're going to chain 15. 1, 2, 3. Now, before your loop disappears into your crochet, you want to pop your finger and thumb into that loop, grab your working yarn, and pull a big loop up. And now keep going, crocheting your chain 15. 14 and 15. Now roll your chain to the side. We want to pop a stitch marker into that back loop. We have 3 back loops, just into that back loop area right there. So pop in a stitch marker and chain 15 again. And remember, when you get to the end of your loop, we're going to pop our fingers in, grab our working yarn, and pull up as much yarn as you want. So this is how I do it. I do it a lot bigger because I crochet on a bed, so I have a lot of space. But you can just keep pulling up yarn, just like this, to the side. I make a big area. And then as you're doing your 3 strands, it comes together. You just want to make sure all those loops or that yarn doesn't get tangled up. So just kind of throw out your yarn in a big circle, and then a smaller circle, and then a smaller circle. It'll give you a lot of triple strand yarn before you have to pull again. So chain 15 again, 14 and 15, and pop a stitch marker into those back loops. So just roll that chain to the side. Look for those camel bumps along the back of your chain and pop in a stitch marker. So you can pause the video, just keep working along, doing your chain 15 and popping in a stitch marker until you have used up your entire 100 grams of yarn. Your whole ball of yarn is going to be finished. Ran out of stitch markers or just don't have enough? Grab some pieces of yarn. Keep your scraps handy or cut a bunch of 2-inch pieces, any color as long as it's a different color than the yarn you're using. And then before you do your stitch or your chain where you want to use a stitch marker, just lay that bit of yarn underneath your crochet hook, just like this, and then make the chain or stitch that needs the stitch marker. How handy is that? When you've crocheted up your ball of yarn at the very end, so I only got about 12 chains into my last section, but that's all right. Just crochet all the way to the end, and then just bring that yarn through to secure your yarn. Just like that. So now we're going to turn our chain into a pumpkin. We want to get some contrasting yarn, 3 or 4 feet of yarn folded in half. And then on the loop end, we're just going to take a stitch marker and loop it through our stitch marker, just so that we don't lose our tail. Just like that. And then the other end, we're going to thread through our yarn needle, both tails. Find the end of your chain, any end, and lay it down so our back loops are facing up. Our stitch marker side is facing up, and our pretty V's are facing down. And we want to just find our very first camel bump, our very first back loop, and we just want to be going underneath one of those strands. Just like that. So pick up that one strand of your very first back loop and thread it through. You want to leave a few inches before your stitch marker, so leave a bit of a tail. And then keeping everything laying nice and flat, bring your next stitch marker over, taking care, we don't want any twists in our flower, not that it's the end of the world, but in a perfect world, no twists. And then find one strand of that next back loop, and you can pop your stitch marker out and thread that next back loop, just one strand of the next back loop, like that. And we're going to do that all the way along. So just make sure your chain is laying down nice and flat. Bring the next stitch marker over and grab one strand with your needle and thread it. So you can pause the video, keep working along, just bringing every strand or every stitch marker over and grabbing one back loop and taking out that stitch marker all the way along. And I'll meet you when you have removed all your stitch markers and gathered up all of your petals. When you get to your very last chain, just go in, same as usual, somewhere into one of those back loop strands, like that, and find your other end. So see how we have our colored yarn is in the center. It's a bit like a spine. So just pull all of your loops on either side of that spine. Now there's no fancy way of doing this. You just push all of your loops together as tight as you can. So now knot your tails with a double knot. So we're going to loop it around twice like a hockey skate tie, and now pull that really tightly as much as you can. And we're using the 2 strands of acrylic so we can really pull tight. And now go back in and try to open it up a little, right, so you can see where those tails are coming from. Right in there. And we're going to pull and then knot it again. So now I have all of my tails in the same section. So grab those tails from our pumpkin tails. We're going to just make one knot. We're going to knot all those together as best you can, as close to the center as you can. All of it's tied in there anyway. Nothing's coming loose, but we just want to keep that little center as tiny as we can. And now we can go ahead and cut off your extra yarn, just leaving about a 1/2 inch tail. So that is going to be where we're going to put the stem of our pumpkin. So grab your green yarn, and again, we're going to triple our yarn. So 3 strands of yarn, and we're going to start at that end with our tail. So leaving a bit of a tail, we're going to need that for knotting later. Make a slip knot, pop that onto your hook, and you can chain as many as you want, anywhere from 6 to 10 to 12. It's going to make your stalk longer. I'm going to chain 10 for this tutorial. So there's 1, 2. If you'd like to follow along with the written pattern, all of my patterns are available on my website, secretyarnery.com, and all of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. Now I'm going to roll that chain to the side, so those pretty little V's. I want to be looking at the back into these back loops. So the first back loop is right underneath the working yarn, and then the second, the third, all the way down. We're going to start into that second back loop, so just sliding that back loop onto our hook, and we're going to just slip stitch all the way down our chain to make it into our stalk. So just slide each back loop onto your hook and slip stitch. Just working all the way down your chain and including this last one right on top of our slip knot. Right there is our last chain. So make sure you get that last chain on your hook, or that last back loop with your last slip stitch, and chain 1, like that. Now go ahead and cut your yarn, leaving about a 5-inch tail. And don't worry if you have extra yarn like me, we are ready to use 3 strands for the next step. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, snug that down to secure, and now we want to make a knot on the bottom of our chain. So including our chain in that knot, and just really pull it. We don't want it to, we want it to be like a really hard knot, like that. So it's super hard, so it's a really hard knot, and it's on our chain, like that. So we lost a few stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it took about 4 stitches, or 4 of our chains, to make that knot at the bottom. So there is our stem. Now we're going to do the cap. To start your cap, again, triple your yarn, and we're going to start with a magic ring. So lay those tails over your non-dominant hand, hold them down on your ring finger, wrap them around your 2 fingers, making an X, and bring it around the 3rd finger. There is a join in my yarn, but I'm just going to forget about it because probably nobody's going to see it. Turn your hand over. You have a short strand and a long strand. Slide your hook under the short strand, hook side facing down and on top of the long strand. Drag the long strand underneath the short strand and point the hook towards yourself up on the fat part of your hook. Release your thumb a little bit so this long strand can slide. And turn your hook away from yourself underneath that long strand. Now you can pinch everything underneath your hook. Turn your hook and bring that long strand through the loop. So this is our magic ring, and we're going to be working into the ring and over all of those tails. So chain 1, pull up a bit of a bigger loop, like that, and we're going to make 8 half double crochets into the center of the ring, going over all of those tails. So 8 half double crochets. Our starting chain does not count as a stitch. So there's 2, 3. You can just keep working around. When you run out of your tripled yarn, don't forget to go ahead and get more whenever that loop gets small. So you can pause the video, 8 half double crochets into the center of your ring, going over your tails, and I'll meet you when you've made your 8 stitches with all of those strands of yarn on your hook. And 8. So remember, the chain doesn't count as anything, so you could just pinch that out of the way. and count the rest of your stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can pull the center a little bit, but leave it open. And our pretty side of our stitches are facing up. So we want to put in our stem from underneath, from the back side up, and we want the knot to stay underneath. Just like that. And now we can shrink that magic ring shut around that stem. Just pull it nice and snug so our stitches come around to meet it. Really tight. Like that. Looks like a bit of a mess, but it's great. And now when you've pulled your magic ring so snug, you can knot the tail from your stem with your magic ring tail. Before we even get going, we can just knot these. And again, these can get knotted really snug. So now that your tails are super knotted, we can cut them off. You want to leave about 1/4 inch tails, just so they stay underneath there. Now looking at the top of our stem, we're going to look for the first real stitch, which is right here. So we're not working into our chain. We're going into the first real stitch right here to join. So slip stitch into that stitch to join. And you want to snug up your yarn. You want a tight slip stitch just to close in that gap. And chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to be working into front loop only. So just into our front loops, all 3 of our front loops of the next stitch. And we're just going to slip stitch. So we're just going to do little loops all the way around. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Triple your yarn whenever you have to. And into the next front loop. Right here, we're going to slip stitch. So we're going to do this all the way around our lid or our cap. So chain 3. And into the next front loop only, we're going to slip stitch. So we're going to do this all the way around our lid, a chain 3 and a slip stitch. So you can pause the video, keep working around 3 chains and then a slip stitch into the front loop only of the next stitch all the way around. And I'm going to meet you when you get right over here where we began. When you get back to where we started, I'm just going to make my last one into that spot where we began. So just into that same stitch. Like that. And then chain 1 to secure your yarn. And cut your yarn. We need a long enough tail to sew this all together. So I just left probably about an extra 12 inches of yarn. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now grab your stem and thread it. Now you don't need to sew it together with all 3 strands. But I have some for a while, so I'm going to use all 3 for a few stitches. And now we're just going to put our lid, or our little cap, right on top of our knot. We're just going to cover everything up with the cap of our pumpkin, like that. So I've threaded all those tails onto my yarn, and we're just going to go back down into your pumpkin. And up the next, we're going to skip a stitch and come up a slip stitch later. So we skip this slip stitch, we're coming into the next one. And we're just going to do this all the way around, making sure we don't get any of our loops with our yarn. So you can pause the video, just keep working around, going into your pumpkin under as many strands as you can, many strands or petals of your pumpkin. and bringing the yarn through that second slip stitch all the way around until our tail is sewn in. When you have attached your stem all the way around, you can just sew in your tail from one side of your pumpkin, so not into the exact same stitch. Pick a different stitch or a different area underneath different strands of yarn, and just go back and forth underneath your cap until your tail gets stuck in the middle, especially this loop. So now my tail, or that loop, is stuck inside my stem. I can just cut it off. And now I have the one long strand left. Yours might be different. It doesn't matter. As long as you're connected to the top of your pumpkin, you're good. And it is easier with one strand now. We're not dragging so much around, so I'm just going to work the opposite direction around my pumpkin, skipping a slip stitch around like this. Just to use up my tail. And then when you feel that your stem is securely attached to the top of your pumpkin, just bring it through to the other side and cut it off. So there is your fabulous no-stuff pumpkin. If yours is looking super fluffy and you want it to look a little bit less fluffy, just sit it how you want it to be and just mold it with your hands. You can make it tall and skinny just by squishing it like this, and then it gets tall and skinny. Or if you want it short and fat, just push it down and mold it with your hands to be short and fat. Like that. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video up there, and stay hooked.